I am actively eating a croissant cookie.
Wait, you're eating a croissant cookie?
Yes, it's fantastic.
I saw that sitting there in the kitchen. It almost disappeared, but I practiced willpower.
And for that, I will offer you a bite.
Through the computer? Like, how are you going to get this to me? Through a microphone? Can you email me a bite?
It's a good question. Do you take Venmo? Can I Venmo you a bite?
Yes.
Punch it to me.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Colby Cast, where we dive into movies,
21 gigawatts!
TV,
Sometimes I'll start a sentence, and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way.
and everything in between.
Well, I don't know how you get a podcast, but you should look into it.
I'm Colby, and I'm joined by my two awesome sons, Caleb
I don't know how to tie my shoes.
and Luke.
I never shut up.
Together, we're your friendly neighborhood pop culture nerds, here to share our thoughts on Star Wars, Marvel, the latest entertainment news, and maybe even some sports.
You believe in miracles? Yes!
So grab a piece of cake
Cake! Everybody loves cakes.
and find a comfy spot on the couch, because this is your place for community and conversation about pop culture and storytelling.
What an incredible smell you've discovered.
Who would win in a fight? Dwight Schrute from The Office or Marshall Erickson from How I Met Your Mother?
Dwight Schrute.
Dwight Schrute.
But Marshall is very tall and grew up with huge brothers, so he's got to be tough.
He's also a softie.
But I feel like if he had to defend Lily or something, he could be tough. You think? I mean, Dwight Schrute is not especially tough.
What are you talking about? He's a survival specialist. Do you not remember the episode where Marshall punches a guy in the face and he hurts his hand?
No, I don't remember that.
That's where he's going to fight the bartender.
Oh, and I just remembered that Dwight Schrute is like a black belt, isn't he?
Yeah, and like 6 different things.
So then Marshall would win because Dwight would not fight. Because, like, black belts they're not aggressive, they just defend. So maybe it would be a tie.
I don't think that's accurate.
You're sticking with Dwight Schrute.
Yes. 100%.
Who would win in a fight? Ted Mosby from How I Met Your Mother or Nick Miller from New Girl?
Anybody, and I mean anybody, could beat Ted Mosby in a fight.
Caleb, who do you think would win that fight? You think Nick Miller could beat up Ted Mosby?
Nick Miller would accidentally be able to do it.
Ted Mosby.
I'm not a New Girl enthusiast. I don't even think I've ever put it on. I think I've just seen it on when you guys have had it on. So I don't know Nick Miller the way that you guys might. But I know Ted Mosby. I would take like 2 to 3 toddlers over Ted Mosby in a fight.
Yeah, he is sort of soft, but he's an academic. He's an architect. You know, he says Renaissance instead of Renaissance. So but Nick Miller, there's no way he couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag. But he's hilarious. He's funnier than Ted Mosby.
Schmidt is like the softie.
I'm not sure that any of the male characters on New Girl is
Winston's
especially.
a cop.
I don't think he's especially tough. Even though he's
cop.
Right, that doesn't mean he's tough. And I
would certainly hope that, like, in a physical altercation, he'd be able to hold his own. That's kind of his job.
Yeah, it's a good point. But he's not in this fight. It's Ted Mosby and Nick Miller. Yeah, Schmidt is not tough either. Cece, I think, is probably the toughest person on that show. Last one. Who wins in a fight? Robin Scherbatsky or Mike Tyson?
Depends what's the location.
The streets of New York.
What time of year?
Spring.
Then Mike Tyson. Yeah. Fall and winter, I got Robin because her
What?
Canadian superpowers will come in with the cold. But the warmer temperatures, they weaken her.
I was wondering why it had to do with the time of the year, but that makes a lot of sense. But Robin Scherbatsky is constantly packing. Like, there's no way that Mike Tyson is going to even initiate a fight when she says, "I am a card-carrying member of the NRA."
Yeah, I'm sure Mike Tyson doesn't know his way around a firearm either.
Caleb, who's your vote?
Mike Tyson, because he does crazy neck exercises.
Wait a minute. I just remembered Mike Tyson was on How I Met Your Mother, wasn't he?
That's a good question.
When was he on How I Met Your Mother?
I think he was. I remember there's something to do with him and a baby carriage. It was in one of the later seasons, or maybe it was like a flash forward. You know how they do flash forwards and flashbacks on that show? I think you're going to. How do you not know this? This is a thing. Google
I
How I
do
Met Your
remember
Mother, Mike
this.
Tyson. Okay, thank you. I'm not crazy. I think it would be more like a two nuclear powers that are pointing their missiles at each other and just will not fire because they know it would be bad for the rest of the world if Robin Scherbatsky and Mike Tyson fought. So they just
When an
wouldn't.
unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
Yes, yes, yes. That's it. I would put my
Yeah,
money on Scherbatsky though. She's tough.
Ted Mosby versus Nick Miller is a stoppable force versus a movable object.
Exactly.
Can you
Um,
quickly just remind me why Mike Tyson is so famous?
oh,
Like,
because he
if you had to narrow his fame into one exact moment, what would it be?
Pigeon enthusiast.
Yes.
a what enthusiast?
Pigeon.
Oh, pigeon. Yeah, pigeon enthusiast. Well, I mean, for me, growing up when he was annihilating people in 10 seconds,
No,
he
what's the specific moment?
I don't know. Look him up on YouTube. He would just punch people really hard. Yeah, of course. I mean, of course. Like later on, he started to sort of devolve. His whole career was like going in shambles. He had a tough time. He bit Evander Holyfield's ear. So maybe pop culture wise, probably the ear biting situation. But I think he's sort of rehabbed his whole image since then. Don't you?
Oh, sure, but I needed you to set me up for my next point. Even if Robin was carrying, he would eat the clip. He would just take out the bullets, floss with whatever he could fit between his teeth, and like he has no restraint.
I'm trying to come up with a Robin Scherbaitsky joke, but I'm not coming up with anything. And from the deafening silence that I just occurred to, that was not the joke either.
Yeah, I was hoping that you would just be able to move on from it.
I started watching that hockey show on the Amazon Prime. You guys have finished this? It's called what is it called? Faceoff or something?
I haven't started it.
Oh my gosh! What? I thought you did.
No, I think I've seen like the last 10 minutes of the last episode and that's it.
You just jumped right to where we could watch the Oilers lose. That's what you did.
That's all I needed.
I'm enjoying it from the beginning because I'm working my way up. I'm savoring, reliving the NHL playoffs from last spring, knowing exactly how it ends. And I'm thinking if this is going to be a recurring show, again, it's called Face Off on Amazon Prime. It's 6 episodes, sort of highlighting and following around different hockey players through the NHL playoffs from last season. Um, I may just not watch hockey anymore until this show comes out, and then I'll just watch it over the course. I'll just binge through it in 6 episodes, so I don't have to worry about all the stress that that's involved in the NHL playoffs.
The NHL playoffs are the best time of year. Like the grind of the playoffs is so exciting to me, and even like as exciting as the Stanley Cup final is, I feel like the first round to me is my favorite. There's nothing like it.
Well, there's hockey on constantly. There's like three games a day for like two street 2 weeks straight. When during the first round. So yeah, that's pretty cool. But I have to disagree with you. The NHL playoffs are not the best time of year. It becomes the best time of year if the Ducks and Sharks don't make the playoffs, when the Knights and the Oilers are eliminated or miss the playoffs completely. That's when it's the best time of year. If any of those four teams make it, then until they're gone, then it doesn't become the best time of year. And that's just my petty Kings fan coming out. And I'm not going to apologize for it.
That's fair, but I also enjoy the building of the high to watch them fall. Um, like the fact that Edmonton almost came back from 3-0 just to lose in game 7. I love that so much. I think that's even better than getting swept.
Oh yeah. I agree with you. But the stress involved in experiencing it in real time is exactly that. It's very stressful. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing the last two episodes of this little face-off season because I know it focuses in on the finals, and I'm going to enjoy watching the Oilers lose again for about 2 hours whenever I watch this. Caleb, are you done with your croissant cookie?
I will be eating it the entire episode. It is
Oh, okay.
huge.
Have you watched this show at all?
Yeah, but I don't think I should talk too much about it because I'm all for growing the game, and hate doesn't really grow the game that much.
So you're not enjoying it? You didn't like the production?
I thought it was a cool concept, but the show still just feels like a concept.
Well, so I mean, I've only watched 3 episodes, so I'll admit that was not a ringing endorsement. You've seen all of them?
Yeah, I watched
Okay.
the first 3 and then got busy, and then, like, a week and a half later, watched the second 3.
So clearly, this is a very niche audience, right? Hockey fans. This is like a behind the look at professional hockey players, and they sort of key in on like two players from opposing teams for each episode. And the first episode is William what is it, Nylander or Nylander, right?
Nylander.
So William Nylander and David Pasternak from the Boston Bruins, William Nylander from the Toronto Maple Leafs. They were friends in Europe growing up and like played on the same team together. And then the second one was Jack Eichel, sort of juxtaposed against Philip Forsberg. Jack Eichel's from the Vegas Golden Knights, and Philip Forsberg is on the Nashville Predators. And then the last one I saw is focusing back on the Bruins again with Jeremy Swayman, your guy, the goalie, and Matthew Tkachuk from the Florida Panthers. And like if you're into seeing behind the scenes or getting to know like these athletes or these personalities that you only really get to see during boring interviews where they say like pre-canned stuff, unless our friend Ross Holloway is interviewing him and he actually gets him to talk about cool stuff, then it's sort of cool, like to see the human side and the perspective um,
I thought
of the athletes. So
I thought it was gonna be a lot more of that, and I know, like, a lot of these shows, they follow the players, and they'll ask them questions, and then they just don't show the interviewer. They'll just show, like, the responses to the questions, but I just felt like it was just so, like, hype and media heavy that it didn't even really feel like it was about the the in the weeds of the players. It felt like it was supposed to feel like it was about the players. Like, it felt like a really long trailer for the show with, like, a side of the show, you know?
I sort of do understand what you mean by that. So like more sizzle and not enough bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm happy that they're doing something like this because anytime, like you were saying, growing the game and stuff, anytime that you can get some NHL in the limelight or get maybe some people who wouldn't necessarily watch a game or go to a game, maybe they'll be, clicking through the Amazon Prime and be like, oh, what is this thing about? Let's watch some people beat each other up, which there isn't a ton of that. I mean, and that's not really a selling point for hockey anyway. But at any rate, um, if you're a hockey fan and you have Amazon Prime and you haven't had a chance to watch it, check it out. We'd like to hear what you have to say. I'm enjoying the first few episodes. I guarantee you, I'm going to enjoy the last two most of all. But that's just because I'm petty. But you know what I'm really enjoying?
The Penguin.
Ooh, you're ready. You're ready to go because yeah, we are here. We are here to talk about the Penguin, episode 4 and 5. A couple episodes ago, we did the 1 through 3. We've got 4 and 5 ready to go right now. I don't know again anything about what you guys think about these episodes. I do know that we are all enjoying the show based on our conversation from 1 through 3. And my first question for both of you regarding 4 and 5, before I give you any of my thoughts, is this. Are you continuing to enjoy this show after episodes 4 and 5?
I'm loving it. I like it even more now. And I was already enjoying it before, but episode 4 and 5 were incredible.
What do you think? Why? Let's focus in on episode 4 because I think episode 4 before we tackle 5. Let's talk about 4 specifically because I think it's a very very provocative episode of television, not just about the show, but like TV in general. So we'll start with the 4 talk before we get to the 5 talk. So Caleb, answer that question before we get to the 4 talk, and chew faster so that cookie will. Maybe you should have a big glass of milk with ice to help you eat that cookie. Yeah, the ice is to keep it nice and cold, even though you guys think it's gross. I like it. It's okay.
The only time I like ice in dairy is ice cream, but I feel like putting ice in milk, ew.
Ice and milk is just deconstructed ice cream with like a few fewer ingredients. So
You keep it.
Yeah, without the best one, sugar.
so yes, Caleb, are you enjoying the show now? More, the same, or less after episode 4 and 5?
It feels epic. Like it feels like an incredible world they've built. It feels like 4 and 5 has just made it heavier, but also raised the stakes and upped the tension. And to answer your question, yes, I'm enjoying it more. But I think it's a perfect example of a show being able to have pretty much like world ending feeling without having to have this super like like a Thanos type character like Marvel likes to do every single movie now.
Oh, that's an interesting take because I have thought about Marvel a couple times. We'll get to that, I'm sure. But I'm going to give you my opinion on the show after watching 5 episodes of it now, and I am absolutely blown away. I don't even know what this show is. It's so ridiculously good. And here comes a hot take. And it occurred to me when I was watching episode 5. And you mentioned the world that it's sort of building through these episodes. And that world is Gotham, right? I mean, this is a Gotham centric world. It's all happening in Batmanville. And I'll tell you what I thought. This world that they're building in Gotham is as interesting to me, and I feel like has the potential to be as interesting, if not more interesting, than Westeros.
I
and
knew
Game
you
of
were going to go
Thrones.
there.
I really believe that it's so nuanced in the layers that it's showing us of these different people in different places, and everybody to me is so interesting. It's just you could like I'm just gonna jump to Victor. Like Victor could you could make a show about Victor.
I
I don't know
disagree.
how you would do that, but that's no, I think
I
you
agree
could.
with everything
I
you said
do.
up until you brought up Victor.
Until I brought up Victor.
Yeah, but I don't want to stop your train of thought. Keep going.
No, I just I'm not going to say that you could just pick any random person off the street of Gotham and make a show about them, but I think Victor is more than that. That's why I think he could you could do something like that. But that's how impressive the show has been in its production, in its writing, and its performances. Like I want to rewatch episodes of this show, but they're so long and I don't have time to rewatch these things. I want to go back and rewatch, and I don't remember the last time I'll be honest, I don't remember the last time I felt like that about a TV show, especially one that we're covering here on the podcast. Um, like I keep thinking about, like I really enjoyed House of the Dragon season 2. I loved it. I know it was sort of divisive in some ways, but I enjoyed it. But I'm thinking about like The Last of Us, Andor. Those are shows that I felt like after watching the show and going about my day, like just sort of falling back and thinking about things that happened in that episode that I just watched, and it's happening again in this. And this is such an absolute triumph of a show, and we still have 3 episodes left, that I'm just enjoying every second
Me
of
too.
it.
I'm eating it up. I also thought about Game of Thrones, and I thought, yeah, I'm enjoying this as much as I enjoyed any season of Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon for that matter. But then I thought of a show that I don't think either of you have ever watched. And that show is called Gotham.
I haven't ever watched that. Is it
I
good?
watched it like while it was coming out, and that was a long time ago. That was like well before COVID. I really wonder when it first started coming out, but yeah, I had been watching it as it was coming out, and it follows Commissioner Gordon, and there's a young Bruce Wayne in it, and he plays a small part, but it's mainly about other villains in Gotham as they're sort of starting to spring up, and it's a good show, but it's sort of limiting in what it can be because I think it's really hard to do a Gotham without a Batman. But I think that's part of what makes this Gotham so cool because there is no Batman that you see. But I found myself thinking like, what is Robert Paddington Bear Batman thinking about this right now? Because I'm sure he knows, right? He had already been involved with the Falcone family and the Penguin and the Maronis, and like all this was already set up in the Batman. So now you have him still lurking in the shadows, and I don't think they're gonna bring him out. But the fact that you have all this going on, plus Batman, who's already super cool on top of that, it's such a cool universe they've built.
Yeah, I echo all of that, and I don't even find myself thinking too much about like, oh, why isn't Batman doing this or that? Because everything is really so street level and self contained that I don't know that there would be anything that has happened in the show that would like hit his radar, right? So he doesn't have to figure into this story because it's a self contained story about these two crime families, about the Penguin and Sophia, about Victor hiding in, like a lot of it takes place inside of
Over the
places,
course
right?
of a very small
It's
period of
not
time.
even out in the street. Sure, absolutely. I don't even know if we're getting into weeks here, right? Caleb, you brought up like Marvel, and the way that I connected this show to Marvel is the villains and how Marvel has this pretty bad reputation of not having great villains, and they've had some great ones, like legitimately really good ones, and they've also had some very boring cookie cutter quote unquote comic book villains that just are there for our heroes to be cool beating. But this show literally is about two villains, and we're seeing this long drawn out nuanced villain origin story or origin continuation story, because I mean, I guess technically the Penguin was already, I mean, he wasn't really the Penguin in the Batman, right? So I don't want to be the guy comparing DC and Marvel, but this show actually has me interested in seeing more DC things if they can get stuff like this right. And I haven't felt that way for quite a long time. And I've been a Batman fan for a long, long time, but it's always been about Batman. I really haven't cared too much about the big universe that he sort of exists in. And I know that's a big deal because he's got this whole murderer's row of all these villains, and Arkham Asylum is in play, and you've got this big complex Gotham story in the comics, but I've never really been into that. I'm just like, just give me some cool Batman. But this show like makes me want to know more about what happens in this world. And yeah, it's just I
I
could
feel
just
like
gush
we've
about it
talked about this
over and over.
before, but I have a small, smooth brain, so I have forgotten. Is this gonna like loop into James Gunn stuff?
No, so it's actually an interesting point of conversation. It isn't. It's going to be its own thing. The Batman movie, of course, leads to this, and then from what I understand, this season will lead to the sequel to the Batman. I think they're calling it the Batman Part Two,
Creative.
and it's going to be its yeah, right. Yeah. It's going to be its own thing, so it's going to exist. I think they're branding this as Elseworlds. Is that what it's called? Do you
No
know,
idea.
Luke? Yeah, I do. I think the James Gunn stuff is going to be the DCU, but then they're going to have these Elseworld things, which would be the Joker, which is going to be the Batman stuff, and they're going to exist on their own, so they don't have to tie into the bigger James Gunn universe, which I think is good because this world is so interesting to me. I don't need to see anybody else involved. I think it's big enough as it is. Another interesting thing, sort of along those same lines, is the original idea for for this show. It was going to be a limited series, or is supposed to be a limited series. There's never been a plan, or there hasn't been a plan for a season two or a continuing storyline to bring multiple seasons. It was going to bridge the Batman and Batman Part Two, and that was going to do it. But the show has increased viewership every single episode. It has not lost viewers. It's only grown from week to week to week. Not even House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones have done that, nor did The Last of Us do that. This show has topped out. Episode 5 had 1.8 million viewers, and that was, I think, like a 6% increase from the previous episode. And anyway, it's grown in viewership from the beginning to now and every single week. So I don't know if that's going to play into like maybe having to switch things up and like, hey, people are really digging this, so we're going to keep printing our money and keep doing the show. I don't know if that's even something that they should do. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Would you want like multiple seasons of this kind of thing, or is it good because it's so self-contained?
I think it depends because if you want to go tie it into the rest of the Batman and the movies and stuff like that, then I think you need to stop it here. Or maybe, couple seasons movie, and go that route. But I feel like that's what Marvel's doing with the Disney Plus shows. I think if you're going to keep it self contained, then you have to like really separate yourself. And it is very separate from Batman so far until episode 5, but I'm sure we'll get to that because of, they don't even show anything in Batman, but just the fact that they're going to Crown Point, which was, you know, a direct effect of, or a direct result of the effects of the Batman. I think that sort of ties it in deeper than anything else we've seen so far.
I want to I want to get to that. Definitely want to get to that scene in Crown Point, but we're gonna make our way there. Let's start with episode 4 because I think this is a landmark episode of TV, and this show is insane. I reference like a villain origin story, and to me, this episode, of course, this is the one where we see Sophia's backstory. She goes to Arkham. She's framed by her father. Her father, Carmine, is the guy that's actually killing these prostitutes. And when she confronts him about it, he frames her for their murder and puts her in Arkham Asylum. Like all of that stuff was absolutely terrifying to me. But as far as the episode itself, this is probably, I think, in my opinion, my humble opinion, this is the most perfect villain origin story I've ever seen from any villain of all the 40 years that I've been watching superhero movies and TV shows. This was absolutely stellar. Kristen Milioti deserves the awards, all the awards. Just give them to her because she was absolutely chilling. Um, I was wondering, like, when I found out that the mother from How I Met Your Mother was going to be on this show, I was like, am I going to be able to see? I don't see anything but Sophia Falcone. Like, she's doing an incredible job, absolutely incredible job. Overall, what did you guys think about this episode? And then we can get into some specifics.
I loved it. I don't know if it was the best villain origin story we've seen. I would have to think about that. But it was very impressive. I think the fact that we got to see her be normal for the first time is what was so jarring. And yeah, I agree with you. Her performance has been incredible. And seeing her be a normal person and be kind and caring and compassionate when she was doing that in the beginning of the episode, and that was genuine and sincere, it was so jarring to see how different she looked once once they got to the point of her getting out of Arkham, and the progression of her getting there was very natural too. You saw her sort of slip a little bit by a little bit by a little bit, and it all made so much sense by the time it got to the end.
It just fit in like a hand in a glove, like all the perfect puzzle pieces. Caleb, what did you think about it?
I don't really like flashbacks, and I think I've shared that before, but this is really, really well done. You don't need you don't need any additional words on the screen to understand that it's gone backward and then it's gone further forward than the last point that we saw the show in from episode 3. And then pretty much just like everything in between. By no means are they jumping back and forth between future and past a bunch. They dedicated pretty much like all of episode 4 to the her time in Arkham, and I think it's just a really well done story because we're getting a story itself being told in front of us while adding history the entire way, and they do a good job of managing unspoken history and building it through dialogue too. So I think that's been a consistent thing that I've really enjoyed throughout the whole thing, and something about episode 4 just like made me enjoy it that much more.
It's masterful television. It's just masterful storytelling. And you mentioned the fact that it's a flashback episode, and there's been some discussion online about that. And I know that flashback episodes can be sort of divisive, like other shows that have done flashback episodes that where they haven't been very effective. It really like becomes a point of discussion for fans while they're watching the show, right? But this, I like I said, I want to watch it again. As difficult as it is as a what as to watch what happens in this story, just the construction of the episode is just so good. We have not just flashbacks, but we have flashbacks within flashbacks, and one of the coolest things, like visually, was when she was in her cell, and it wasn't right when she was in her cell, but she was starting to go into the cafeteria. She met her, not her roommate, but her neighbor. She called herself Magpie. And then, they start doing this terrible shock therapy on her. And then at one point she sees like something peeling off the wall, and she starts to peel off like this outer layer. And then as we are cutting through all of these disturbing images with her shock therapy and then everything else, you see her peeling off the dark parts of her wall, and it's revealing the wallpaper from her room that she found her mother. And I didn't know what was happening when I first saw that, but the way all of that is edited together, and then at the end you see she's literally sitting in her cell surrounded by the wallpaper. Now the walls look like the walls from her home, and it to me it said two things to me. First of all, that's like she's becoming more and more insane, right? As the wallpaper is being removed, you can see that as like, okay, she's devolving into insanity, right? But then at the same time, it's making it look like it's more her home. So she's becoming more at home in Arkham, which is an absolutely chilling thing to think about. But so visually, I thought that was one of the coolest things in this entire episode. Uh, and then I don't know, just the way that everything was edited together. I never really think about how things are constructed, right? But to be able to edit something together that makes sense to the viewer, like we start out in the current day, right? The episode starts from her perspective after Victor shows up and uh, rescues Oz, and they leave Sophia, and we see her head's bleeding, and she makes a phone call, and then she passes out. That's when we see her, like Luke, you were saying, in her normal younger life. And then from there, we flash back even further to where she finds her mom. And then we flash forward again, but not to present day. And that can be difficult, right? You can get turned around. I didn't feel like I was confused whatsoever by any of it. I was just eating everything up. It was just so good. It was
Yeah,
insanely
I
good.
thought the the progression of it was so important, and I think that's what made it so effective. And I think the scene that sort of solidified it for me was when that one lady was unchained, and she just starts beating Sophia up, and then she says, like, why
Yeah.
wasn't she chained? And they said, oh, do you think someone's out to get you? And she's aware that they're trying to make her seem paranoid. And I think that even though she does lose a couple screws, we are not seeing some broken woman by the end of season or episode 5, right? Because
No.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
never think she fully snapped. She changes who she is, and some of her morals probably go out the window a little bit, and she's a little more cynical. But I still think that even through all that, she didn't stay true to herself. Um, but she definitely isn't some crazy villain who's just going to go do bad stuff because she wants to go do bad stuff, you know?
It
And
definitely feels like
Yeah.
she feels like she spent enough time denying everything people were telling her she was, and then just decided to say, "No, I'm done doing that. Let me be exactly who you say I am, and in like the most spiteful way possible."
And I think some of the motivation that we're seeing with her remaining in control is the fact that she was surrounded by people. So she's in my opinion, with the exception of Alberto, her brother, she's surrounded by people in this family that are one of two things: violent criminals that are protecting their criminal life, or hangers on that are benefiting from those violent criminals that won't ever do anything to disrupt their life. And it even means writing letters or supporting people who wrote letters that got an innocent person stuck in a hellish space that drove her insane. So what I feel like she was able to hold on to the fact, like, I don't know, maybe you can just call it revenge, right? These she was gonna At some point she was going to get out of this asylum, and she was going to make these people pay because they wronged her. And you see her losing her entire life, right? When she's in that office with Alberto and the attorney, and the attorney's saying, okay, you're going to do 6 months in Arkham and blah blah blah, this and that. And then they literally physically remove her, and they go through the whole like process of taking someone. She's losing not just her freedom but her life. They take her everything. She's completely stripped of everything. And visually, the way that they did that, I thought was super effective. But then what kept her grounded, and like to your guys' point, she never fully became just like a wackadoo villain. Like the Joker says, I'm just a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught one. She kept her agency. She remained cool, calm, collected, and calculating, to the point where when she gets out, she's got this plan. So we can just fast forward to the end of this episode where we see her begin to enact her plan. So, what did you guys think about the whole dinner scene where she is just just un I, fully in control, but seemingly becoming more and more unhinged at the same time? And I don't even know how that works. What did you guys think about
Loved
that
it.
scene?
I loved it. It was one of my favorite scenes in the show so far. And it was, she had clearly had some sort of epiphany or made some sort of decision on who she was going to be and what she was going to do. Because that's the first time we see her speak with some confidence and self assurance, you know? And I loved how it started off with her like crossing her eyes with a mouthful of meatballs to make the little girl laugh. And and then her
Yeah,
just saying, "Okay,
so good.
I'm gonna interrupt you and take over this speech now," and then just absolutely not care about anything the rest of them say. And how those people went to sleep under the same roof as somebody who just clearly had a psychotic break in front of them is beyond me.
I think it speaks to the fact that they're so fat and happy, and that they've been benefiting from all these layers of protection, that they underestimated Sophia for so long, because they all knew she was innocent. She didn't actually kill those people, and they don't know what she had become in Arkham. That they underestimated her, and boy, did they pay for it. Caleb, what did you think about the dinner scene?
It reminded me a lot of the pasta scene where, again, she was very aware that nobody wanted her there. Everybody's eyeing her, not because they want to see what she does, but surprised that she showed up in the first place. Um, but it just shows she's almost like breaking into place. Like she's falling apart, but she's falling apart exactly where she should be. Um, because it just seems like she's comfortable with this chaos that she's about to create, and is thriving off of everybody being uncomfortable that she's there. But she definitely still has her morals because she offs everybody in that room except for presumably what, her niece.
Something like that.
Yeah, Yeah, like a niece or a cousin.
It's
or something,
interesting you
cousin's kid.
bring up that she's comfortable in that chaos because that's exactly what Oz is trying to do. He's not trying to make her comfortable, but just trying to create as much chaos as possible, right? Where he is shooting himself in the foot to distract everybody from the fact that his face is bleeding, right? It it's impressive how he's able to fail and fall upwards, but it's not getting to her. Somehow she's still better off right now than she was at the beginning of the show, despite all the chaos that Oz has constructed.
Yeah, that's well said. The two and we haven't even really talked about Oz. He did have a small part. Well, not I guess not a small part, but he wasn't in the episode a lot. But what we learned about him through these flashbacks was quite uh, eye opening because of his betrayal. Like he's always got his eye on the bigger fish, right? So even though he was Sophia's driver, um, it felt like he maybe looked at them as more like friends than a superior subordinate situation. And then like she puts him in his place at one point, reminding him, "You're just my driver." And that when he ultimately went to Carmine to tell him about her seeing this reporter, it was on brand for him, right? Because he was just put in his place and he wants that upward mobility. So he's not going to get that through Sophia at that time. He's going to get it through Carmine, the dad, the boss, right? So of course he goes behind her back, rats her out to Carmine, and then suffers the consequences. And that just makes their relationship in the present day even more interesting to me because I look at them as very much equals. Like you said, Oz, he may be failing, but he's failing forward. And even though his strategy can't really be detected by other people, she seems right up to the task because she's got her own ulterior motives and her plans, well laid out. And she doesn't really even need to care about Oz. It's just a great dynamic. And it leads me to a question that I'm going to save till the end when we talk about episode 5, sort of about like those two characters. So, is there any other final thoughts you wanted to share about episode 4 before we move on?
No, go ahead.
So, of course, episode 4 ends with the reveal that, as soon as you saw her in the greenhouse with the little girl doing the whole camping thing, like something terrible is happening over in that house, but what in the world is it? And of course, we see her. She's still in her evening gown. She puts the gas mask on, and she had just gassed the place with, like carbon. I guess it's carbon dioxide, right? Carbon dioxide.
Monoxide.
Except for that one carbon monoxide. Yeah, the bad carbon breathing stuff. That one door, that one room that she left the window open, we see her go in there, and of course it's Johnny Vitti, and she, gets him out. Everyone else is dead. I mean, that whole scene was so chilling and shocking. I don't know that it was matched by anything else or exceeded by anything else in episode 5, but there was some pretty chilling and shocking stuff that happened in episode of 5. Of course, in this episode we see the fallout of that entire thing. The police are there. Of course, she's cool, calm, and collected. And we'll just stick with Sophia before we get into Oz, because of course this episode has a lot to do with Oz as well. But let's just continue the storyline that we see with Sophia. Sophia Falcone is no longer, just like the Falcone family is no longer. Now she takes on her mom's name, Sophia Gigante, and creates her own family. The scene where she's got all of the thugs together in the room and Johnny is sitting at the table was, to me, as captivating as the dinner scene from the previous episode. And the fact that, like, I love it when a character does something that you just want them to do and you know that they should do. And the minute Johnny Vitti starts to run his mouth and starts to undermine her authority, he's looking the other way, right? And she just pulls the gun out and caps him right in the head. And pours the money out and onto the table and is just like, "Hey, this is a new family. You guys were never given the respect by the old regime. I'm going to give you that respect." Was such a baller move. Like, it's awesome. Like, I don't have a lot of great descriptive words for this episode except for the fact that this is just a great
And
show to be
then
watching.
I feel like there's no other way to show absolute buy-in, no pun intended, because of the money, than having them literally like a crow picking off of a carcass, picking the money out of like their old boss's
Yeah.
blood.
Yeah, because it was all smeared with his own blood, and they did not care one bit, did they? They were, she was buying their loyalty right there, not just with money, but the promise of like respect and to benefit from the work that they have done, where they have just been taken advantage of. There's just another thing that was cool was you see how her I had this thought, but I don't have enough time to go back and look, but I think, let me know if your memory is the same. But her costumes up to this point, her wardrobe, have sort of been high up on her neck, right? Those scars that were so prevalent on her neck and shoulders in episode 5, we really haven't seen them like that before. So now we're seeing this birth of a true, like, who Sophia is, right? Because now she's wearing clothes that are revealing her neck and her shoulders, almost like displaying her scars as a, like,
I
a
thought the
badge of
same
honor
thing
of, like,
because I thought like, is there something wrong with my eyes? Why do I see like wrinkles on her shoulder? And then I realized, well, it was all her scars and everything. And I think that she dolled up a little bit before she goes out and talks to everybody, and I thought that that was important because she's wearing that bright yellow dress when she gasses everybody and is walking through the house, right? This is, it's not that she's unwell right now. She's probably her best self that we've seen her in the show so far.
yeah, which is so weird to say because, like, she's a mass murderer now. Like, she had killed previously, but now she's like not just a mass murderer, but she's killed her entire family. So the don't think that the irony has been lost on me, and that this is definitely not a hero story. These are villains we're talking about, but it's just so compelling. And then, of course, we see the progression of her going through the episode. She ends up getting to Salvatore Moroni, right? And he's gotten out of jail because of stuff that Oz had done, and well, messed up, I should say, because Oz messes up a lot in this episode, and goes to strike a deal with him. And really, what choice does he have? What choice does he have? And if the survival instinct for him is to join forces with her. So now we have an entire dynamic that's shifted. Used to be the Maronis and the Falcones. Now the Falcones are gone. Oz is going to try to build his own empire, and the Giganti family is teaming up with the Maronis. So it's just, it's just all so good. But I brought up Oz, so let's talk about the Penguin. He makes a few missteps here in this episode, but in true Oz fashion, seems to land on his feet. And I want to get to that final scene, but let's talk about a little bit before that. He kidnaps the Maroni's kid. He ends up using him as a bargaining chip to get his mushrooms back, right? So he can build this drug empire. I did not expect him to set Nadia Moroni and her kid on. Well, he's an adult kid, so I like that makes it better. But I did not expect that to happen, where they end up on dying by being engulfed in flames. That was so disturbing.
Yeah, I had a realization when that scene happened because that takes place shortly after Or how deep into episode 5 is that? It's pretty early on, right?
Yeah, it's maybe before
So
halfway
I
point.
had already liked Sophia, but then after episode 4, you're just like, yeah, she's great. She's awesome. And then Oz goes and does that, and I just think, who are we really rooting for here? I know it's the Penguin and he's the guy, but I kind of find myself pulling for Sophia right now. And he goes and does that, and like Nadia said, like there are rules, that going and kidnapping somebody's son and then lighting him on fire after you let him go, that is, that's dark. And all's fair when you're in a situation like that. I get it, but right now I'm torn between, I really don't know who I'm rooting for right now.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point because it actually gets to a question that I had that I wanted to end the episode with, but we'll just get out there now. Who are you rooting for in this? Like, I mean, the easy one for me is Victor, because Victor is sort of like, he's not innocent anymore because he had his chance to get out. He did, and he chose to stay. But he's like the most innocent of everybody that we're seeing. I would consider a main character in the show. But Oz, he had his lovable moments. Like you've seen him uh, loving his mother, caring for his mother, concerned for his mother, concerned for Vic as well. He's got good things in him. And then I could say the same thing for Sophia. Sophia is in a she was a victim. She was an innocent victim, and she's now playing the cards that she was dealt. But when Oz did that, like you were very much reminded, yeah, this is a super villain. If you remember who we're talking about, this is the Penguin from the Batman comics. He might be likable in some ways, but he's a bad dude, and that was definitely an example of that. Caleb, who are you pulling for in this show?
It's hard to say because the Penguin's name is on the door. But I think they've just done such a good job with Sophia and all of her on-screen time. Everybody's been against her except Oz, but in a different way, he's been against her. Um, so I'm just gonna go with Sophia because she's a huge part of episode 4 and 5. But like ultimately, we know the outcome.
I was another question that I had written down is do we know the outcome? Like, do you think that Oz could die in this show, knowing that there's like not a season 2 planned? Like,
I
could
I, I
he?
don't think he could.
No. What about
No, I
Sophia
mean,
then?
I could see her dying as well.
Oh, I hope
Um,
not.
I hope
I hope
I
not.
hope she doesn't either. I can't find myself, or I can't bring myself to root for one or the other. I really like both of them. I could totally see either one of them being on top, and honestly, I'll be happy either way because I'm I'm thinking, how does this set up for the most interesting Gotham and make the Batman's life as hard as possible? And I think both of them would be equally challenging for Batman, and that's what makes Batman interesting, is him overcoming the obstacles that he faces. Um, I hope that they both can survive so that they can just keep making episodes and seasons about this. But I think Oz is gonna pull through.
I hope both of them survive. That's just me because I think that would be compelling storytelling. And when you have a good character, I don't want them to go away. Um, selfishly, and I agree with you. I think it lends itself to good storytelling if you keep them around. Um, but let's finish off then with the final scene. So we see Victor go and he gets Oz's mom, takes her to Crown Point. She's not happy. That reminds her of where she came up, and I think they both said that they came from that area anyway. Oswald goes to his confidant and his safe place, and is rejected by her, then goes and finds Victor and his mom, and then really is decimated by his mother. Like, she just says, "You can't even take care of your mother," tells him to get away, and he's at a very low point. And that's when he finds the coin that reminds him of the trolley that he and his brothers used to go take, which happens to be underground. So then he goes and he tells Victor, "Let's go," opens up this door and into this underground, basically like network of underground trolleys. And it's inferred that, like, okay, we're back, right? This is I've got I'm back on my feet again after having been knocked down through the whole episode. And I have to tell you guys, I absolutely geeked out. I had a massive geek out moment when this was happening, because up to this point, when you see Colin Farrell as Oz Cobb in this movie, in this show, I should say, you're not looking at like Danny DeVito Penguin or Burgess Meredith Penguin. You're looking at like a guy who's trying to be a mob boss, a crime family, a boss of a crime family, not a comic book character. But when I saw that layer, I flashed right back to Batman Returns, because the Penguin, I don't even know if you guys have seen this movie, but if you have, you'll remember the Penguin spends pretty much the whole movie in his underground lair, and he's sending weaponized penguins into Gotham from the tunnels that are in his underground lair. So now we're seeing the Penguin in this potential empire where he can build and use this network of underground tunnels to get in and out of Gotham. And like, my 1991-year-old Colby just like rose up and said, "Hey, remember? Now the Penguin's in his underground lair." And I just love the fact that they did that. And I thought it was so effective the way that they pulled it off. Just stellar. How'd you guys like it?
I thought it was great. It makes sense. I think him being able to grow the mushrooms there is probably the most important thing. But the fact that he was saying, it has access to the whole city and no one else knows about it, it just gives him another tool in his tool belt. But at the same time, Sophia is now partnering up with Salvatore. So they're both getting bigger and better and stronger. And I think those two things happening right after each other make it such a great place to end off on, because now you really have both of them on the up and up.
Yeah, it's setting up a really good finale. The last few episodes. Caleb.
I thought it was cool just for him to have like a home base, just because he very much seems like he's running around up till this point. It didn't really do anything for me in terms of like history of the Penguin, because I really don't have any. I don't know any of the callbacks or anything like that. But I still think it's cool without those things.
But it didn't seem cheesy or like forced. Like, okay, now you got this Penguin character like shoved in this underground layer. Like, it works, right? And for someone who's coming from your perspective.
Yeah, I've never seen a penguin use a tunnel, but that's not to say that they don't.
Yeah, I don't know why he has to be underground, because penguins are not underground. But yeah. Anyway, all right, cool. Any final thoughts then on episode 5, or are your
No,
brain?
that's it for me.
Yeah.
Go
Excellent.
Dodgers.
Oh yeah, the Dodgers are in the World Series. Um, Carmageddon is descending on Los Angeles this Friday because of World Series. There's a Laker game. I think USC is playing on Friday night in a
Pretty
weird,
much
odd.
pretty much all LA sports except for like I think the Kings and like football.
Well, USC football is playing, so
Well, pro
pro
football.
football, and then there's even stuff going on down in the Kia Forum and the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. So if you're on the 5 freeway, don't be on the 5 freeway. And if you're on the 405 freeway, don't be on the 405 freeway. So, yes, there's your public service announcement from the Colby Cast for this week coming up. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Colby Cast. Thank you all for listening. We really appreciate the time that you spend with us. We hope you're enjoying the Penguin as well. And if you are, let us know on Twitter or Instagram or Threads. So for Caleb and for Luke, this is Colby reminding you that if you're going to get a sandwich, order extra pickles. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know. You can find the Colby Cast on Instagram, Threads, and X at the Colby Cast. Episodes can also be found on YouTube, so like and subscribe. If you feel so inclined, rate and review our show on your podcatcher of choice. That really helps the show beat the algorithm and helps us find new friends to add to the conversation. If you're wordy, like me, you can send an email to thecolbycast@gmail.com. All music is licensed through Adobe Stock and performed by ProMusic24. This podcast is not endorsed by anyone or anything for that matter. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of the Colby Cast unless otherwise indicated.
That'll do, Donkey. That'll do.